Hello, everyone. Welcome to Live from the Ranch. A very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to you, depending upon where in the world you're joining us from. We're so glad you could come and join us for this episode of Live from the Ranch. We come to you the first Thursday of every month. And as usual, my co-host is Juliana DeWillems of JW Dog Training and Behavior in the Washington, D.C. area. Hi, Juliana. How are you doing today?
I'm good, Ken. Seems that summer weather is upon us. It is 90 degrees and humid here in DC. Are you guys hot over there in the Pacific Northwest yet?
We're having warmer days than normal, but it's still comfortably cool. So I've got to say I'm appreciating that. We have a ranch class starting next week, and it looks like we're going to be in the high 60s and low 70s all week long with very little rain. So it should be a really beautiful beautiful day. And I'm excited about our episode today. My guest, as you know, is Ayoka Bubar, and we're going to talk about Rally O. And what excites me about it is this is a topic that I know very little about. You know, sometimes you're excited because we're talking about something that you know really well and you're hoping to get a better in-depth view. Other times I get really excited because I'm speaking with a guest that I don't know well or I don't know the topic well. And that always excites me because I love meeting new people and learning new things about dog training that I didn't know before. So I'm excited about that. So should we get started?
Let's do it.
I'll tell you what, the first thing I want to do is do a quick little promo and remind everybody that we have the Karen Pryor Academy has what we call our Dog Trainer Professional Program. And we want to remind you that you can build your skills and knowledge by enrolling in any of our preparatory classes, or if you already have experience, apply to our professional certification program. There's some information on the screen about it, but all you have to do is go to KarenPryorAcademy.com, and that's where you can get lots of great information about the Dog Trainer Professional Program or any of our other programs. And so we're really excited about our new virtual program and lots of different opportunities to take that program. Just look at our website to find out more. So let me introduce Ayoka to you. Ayoka Bubar has been teaching and competing successfully in dog sports since 2006. She has experience in training flyball, agility, tracking, rally obedience, trick titling, conformation, herding, Mondioring, and obedience. Ayoka's current Rottweilers have earned advanced titles in conformation, herding, and rally obedience. This is a really broad range of experience, and it provides her with a unique perspective and a wealth of knowledge to draw upon to help dog handler teams reach their training goals. Ayoka is sought after as a seminar presenter and online workshop instructor. Ayoka believes that dog training should be fun for dogs and their humans, and she likes to employ a number of positive reinforcement techniques to help handlers communicate more effectively with their dogs. Who could argue with that? Ayoka, welcome to Live from the Ranch.
Hi, Ken. So glad to be here.
I'm so glad that you're here. I'm always fascinated when people are interested in dog sports when they have so many different sports that they're involved with, and I'm curious as to what got you involved in wanting to be in dog sports. Is it the sport itself? Is it the training of it? Is it the what drew you to being so active in so many different sports?
Well, in the very beginning, it was that I had friends that were involved in dog sports, and they were always talking about the great times they had. Actually, my very first dog sport was flyball, and they spent, they talked about the great times they had on weekends at flyball tournaments, and so I thought that sounded like a lot of fun, and I wanted to get involved. Once I started getting involved, the training became really interesting to me. I had background experience as a sport coach, and training and coaching aren't that far apart as far as the work goes.
You know, I've only recently in the last couple of years been able to see some flyball competitions, and it's fascinating because of the speed and watching the animals run. And this is totally not the topic we're talking about today, but I was really curious about that board at the end where they pull something out of it. Is that a difficult piece of equipment, or is that just what is that the dog goes to pull the thing that they have to run? Yeah.
That is a box that is spring loaded, and it's almost like a giant pedal on the box. And when the dog pushes on it, The tennis ball pops out of a spring-loaded launcher, essentially. So the dog's got to be really fast and have really good coordination to catch that ball.
It is amazing to see those dogs run and go through that. And interestingly enough, it was just last year that I went to my first Rally O competition, and I had a chance to see it. And it was fascinating to me to see the different signs along the way, and realizing, I thought to myself, this is a type of obedience that I could get behind. In other words, it seemed like it would be like I could get involved in that. I'm not planning to. I don't know that I have the time, but tell me a little bit more about Rally Obedience, and how is it different from regular obedience?
Well, Rally Obedience, I kind of call it, it's really the cousin or the little sister of obedience. And how it came about is people would take their obedience skills and doodle around with them, sort of out of the normal traditional obedience patterns that we see in traditional obedience. And someone said, hey, this would be a great sport. Why don't we make up a sport where you come up to a sign, you perform a certain exercise, which is obedience based. And we set up a course like in agility, where there's multiple stations where you come up to, and we make a whole course out of that, and it's at different every time. So there's a challenge of the course like we have in agility, but it's obedience based skills, and that actually came from obedience.
Yeah, it's really cool. Now, when I watch Rally Obedience, I wasn't sure if what I was watching was high level or beginner obedience, Rally Obedience, but it didn't seem as formally structured Rally Obedience that as regular obedience. Is that true, or was that just my interpretation?
It's definitely a little less formal, and there's many different venues that offer the sport of Rally Obedience, and in all of them you can communicate with your dog throughout, where in traditional obedience you're a little bit, well, quite a bit more restricted in how you can communicate and when and how you can communicate with your dog. So there's much more communication with your dog. You'll see handlers talking to their dogs throughout, and the dogs really enjoy and respond to that.
Well, that's good to know. That's one of the things I did notice, was that people were talking and cueing their dogs and doing a lot more clear interacting with their dogs than I had ever seen in a normal obedience competition. And that appealed to me, but I wasn't sure if that was normal, or if that was just what was going on in the local version of the Rally Obedience that I saw.
Yes.
And when you come up to a sign, I would assume that you're not going to see a sign that says something that you're not expecting. I would assume that going in that there are 10 or 40 or whatever there are number of skills or behaviors that you could expect. They're not going to throw some totally unexpected thing at you. Is that correct?
No, that's correct. At the novice level, there's about 40 signs. 40. And you know that the course could contain any number of those 40 in any combination.
And how many different levels are there in Rally Obedience?
I'm most comfortable with CKC, but with CKC, Canadian Kennel Club, is similar to the American Kennel Club program. There is novice, intermediate, advanced, excellent, and masters. So there's 5 levels that you can go through in the most Rally Obedience programs.
So there's 2 levels above advanced. That's
yes.
Cool. You said that at the novice level that there are 40 different behaviors or exercises that you might expect. How many at the highest level?
Over 100.
Over 100. Wow. So I can see why it would take some time to get to that particular skill level, but to advance in Rally Obedience, do you have to earn certain titles, or do how do you climb the ladder within the Rally Obedience sport?
That's a great question. Each time you qualify under a judge, we call that a leg. So qualifying is passing. So you get a passing score, which is usually around 75%. It's either 70 out of 100 or 170 out of 200. It's in that range. So each time you qualify, you get a leg. And most organizations require 3 legs under 2 different judges to get what we call your title at that level. And then once you have your title, you can move up to the next level.
I see. That's kind of cool. So I understand that you teach, you coach and help teach people how to perform in Rally Obedience. Do you do most of that in person, or do you do it online as well?
Well, I used to do it all in person, but since COVID, I'm doing most of it online now because most of the skills you can learn. You'll see in my demo later, I'm in a little tiny house in a little living room. I teach most of my skills in the living room, and they can be taught in the living room.
Oh, so you don't necessarily need huge spaces to practice or to learn the skills. You can really do them in a relatively small space.
Yes, once you've got the skills and are putting things together in a course, then you'll need some more space. But as far as learning goes and teaching the basic skills, you can do that in a small area.
So when I first started talking to you about coming on to Live from the Ranch, you talked about the fact that I believe you were talking about 8 different concepts that you teach. Can you tell me a little bit about that? That was it that there are 8 concepts that sort of prepare you for almost all of the things that you need to do in novice level rally obedience, or did I misremember that number of 8?
No, you've got that right, Ken. 8 concepts. So I break down those 40 signs in novice into 8 basic concepts that you and your dog need to know in order to form those 40 signs. Some of the signs are a mishmash of 2 concepts, and some may put 2 or 3 together, but 8 basic concepts. Yeah, would you like to hear what they are?
Yeah, I would be really interested just to give me that better understanding of a concept. What do you mean
Yeah.
by this?
So the concept of heeling or walking at the handler's left side by their leg, facing the same way as the handler, is the first concept. And that's kind of the glue that puts the rally obedience course all together, because we heel between stations where we find an exercise and a sign that tells us what to do. Second one is sit. Sits and rally obedience can happen in heel, so at the handler's left side or in front of the handler, which we're more familiar with in pet dog training. Most of our sits we ask our dogs to do are in front of us. Next are left turns and then right turns. We've got to get around the course somehow, so we need some directional turns. We have what we call a call front, which is a little tiny baby recall. So calling the dog from heel position into a front position, so standing or sitting in front. We have circle the handler clockwise. There are a few exercises that require the dog to circle around the handler. A down. There's very few exercises that require a down in heel position, but they are there. And same with a stand. So that makes 8.
And then once you've learned those 8 concepts, did that really give you the tools or the foundation to do almost anything in?
It sure does.
Yeah. And how about as you climb the ladder and become advanced or expert or those higher levels, are there additional concepts that you need to learn?
Yes, there are. In higher levels, there are some obstacles involved, and the dog needs to be able to complete the obstacle and come back and focus into the human. There are, I'm trying to think now, what other concepts we might need to teach. Sometimes going out to the obstacle is part of the challenge. Sometimes the obstacle is just beside the human. So independent obstacle performance is kind of a concept, going out to a position and coming back. I know in the master's level in the AKC, going out and around the cone and coming back are some things that we need to learn at the higher levels. But a lot of the exercises at the higher levels are just compound. They just take 2 or 3 of the basic exercises and require them to be put together differently.
Well, that's cool. That's interesting. So do you find that when you get clients that are interested in learning the sport and learning these concepts, how do you get started working with a dog in a virtual space who's interested in? I mean, just give me can you explain it to me and describe? If I said I really want to learn rally obedience, where would you start with me? What would you what's the first thing we do? What do you begin with?
Well, the first thing I'd ask you is if you've done some basic pet obedience classes, because a lot of those classes focus on coming when called, walking nicely on leash, sits and downs. And some of those are concepts that we use in rally obedience. So I kind of start where the handler and dog team are with what they already know. So if you know a sit in front, then we would start with sits at heel position, and then just getting the dog into heel position, either with luring, using targets, using platforms we can use to get the dog into heel position. Lots of different ways using positive reinforcement that make it fun for the dog and handler.
Well, that's cool. Okay, that makes total sense. So you really, like we always suggested, any kind of teaching, you're trying to meet the learner where they are, find out what they know, and then sort of figure out what you need to build on from there.
Absolutely. There's no point in teaching them things they already know.
No, that makes sense. That absolutely does make sense. Well, that's good. So I understand that you have a dog with you today that is the dog that you're going to demo with us in a little bit. You're going to demo one of the concepts. Is this a dog that you have worked with before, and how advanced are they? And tell us a little bit about what you're hoping to show us with.
Okay, so the dog I'm going to be working with is Anakin. He's just over a year old, and he's a German short-haired pointer. He has some experience with his human, but he and I working together is new as of today. So we've had a few little sessions together to work on the concept we're going to work on, which is right turns. And I guess we'll see how things go. Did you want to hear about how we're going to set up that for right turns, or are you
Yeah,
going to wait for the demo?
tell me a little bit more about how you're going to set that up and what you're going to be working on so that we can anticipate what that's going to look like.
Sure. What we're going to start with is just a few cookies to get him engaged and going. We will then move to, he has some experience walking on the left side and working in heel position. So I'm going to lure him into the heel position, because that's not the skill we're working on. We're going to work on the skill of right turns. So luring him into heel position. Then we're going to use a hand touch to get him to move around me in a clockwise direction. So he has some experience with hand touch. He has some experience with being on my left-hand side. I'm going to reward when he touches my hand and either present him the cookie or drop it on the floor, because that sets him up for coming up to touch my hand again.
Okay. And so this is a dog you just sort of started doing this work with today. So it's anybody's guess how successful he will be, correct?
Yes. He was a little bit worried in here. It's a bit of a tight space for him. He's a big dog, so he's a little bit concerned about everything that was going on. But I think once we get some cookies going, that he'll settle in quite nicely.
Okay, tell you what I'd like to do is I'm going to give you a couple seconds to set that up, Ayoka. And while you're doing that, I'd like to take a quick break and tell everybody about our affiliate program. We call it our Share the Joy of Training affiliate program, and it offers the opportunity for people to earn sales commissions on our best-selling training gear. It's a new program that we love to have more people involved in. And if you'd like to find out more about the affiliate program, you just need to go to shop.clickertraining.com, and you can see that information right there on the screen. If you want to find out more, just go to shop.clickertraining.com, and you can learn more about the Share the Joy of Training affiliate program. All right, let's go back and see if Ayoka is set up. Oh, she is. I see you've got Anakin there.
Anakin.
Go ahead and tell us
what
you're doing, and we'll just watch.
Okay, so he's already in heel position. I just called him into heel position from where he was looking. So I'm going to present my hand ahead of him. He's going to touch it with his nose, and I'm going to give him a cookie. Next time he touches it with his nose, I'm going to mark it with a yes, because that's the marker system he's familiar with. Yes. He got my arm there, but I'm going to count it, and I'm giving him the cookie forward. Yes. Good boy. Yes. So I'm teaching him that moving around me and moving close to me is going to pay off. He wants to sit because he's clearly been reinforced highly for sitting in this position, which is okay. I'm just going to present my hand a little further ahead of him, and he's going to have to shuffle up a little bit. And that works. So I don't have any cookies in this left hand. There, cookie for you. Good boy. Yes. 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 So an alternate game we can play would be when he touches my hand, I drop a cookie on the floor, wait for him to re-engage and touch my hand again. Good boy. Drop a cookie on the floor. Yes. That moves him around me a little bit as well. And we can move a little bit faster that way. Oh my goodness, I dropped 3 cookies at a time. What a lucky dog. And he touched my arm there. I'm going to give him a cookie for that. He's trying. Considering our training relationship is very new. All right, go get a cookie.
And so your goal there is to get him to follow the target, touch the target, but return immediately to the seated position. Is that correct?
Exactly, to come back. So we're going to start again, turning around. Give him a little break. Touch. Good boy. He doesn't have to be sitting. Ideally, I'd like him to be standing, but sitting is where he's most comfortable right now. So we're going to take it because he is moving with us, with me. Good boy. Now, if I wanted him to move a little faster, I could try tossing cookies ahead. Can you touch? Good boy. See if we can get him to move a little faster around me. A little worried. Good boy. Your mama's taught you sit very well. Come on. So he's looking at the cookies in my other hand right now. I'm just being patient while he looks for my target hand. Let's see if we can move ahead a little bit. I think we're still in view and turn around here. He's like, So if he stalls out, I'm just going to take my hand away, bring it back out, and put it a little bit closer so it's a little bit easier for him to reach. Good dog. So this right turn, this is the very basics of it. Don't need a collar, don't need a leash. It's just teaching the dog that following along with you results in cookies.
I just wanted to point out to our viewers that as Ayoka talks about left and right turns, her screen is mirrored, or it's reversed because of the camera, and so it looks like she's working on a left turn, even though it's actually a right turn in real life.
Okay. Yes, left turns are much harder because you're moving into the dog. So I like to start with a right turn because it's a little bit easier to start with. The dog is on the outside of the path and they need to move a little quicker to catch up with you. Whereas on the inside, they've got to actually move back to stay back into position.
And so that dog right now is on your left side healing. It just looks to us like he's on
my right. Yes.
So I just wanted to make sure, as you were talking about it, that people were clear that they're seeing a reversed image.
Good dog. Touch. Good boy. Yeah. He's getting to the point that he's following, but he's not quite touching my hand, which is really interesting. So I'm just waiting till he does touch my hand. Good dog. And I'm pretty much just pivoting in place. So I can do this till I get dizzy, then I've got to stand up, and I'll toss a few cookies ahead for him to go and get, and he'll come back to do more work.
And it's such a pretty basic and simple concept, but it's great at seeing how well it works and how it can teach the animal that very basic behavior of following you.
Yeah. So using this right turn, we can actually teach from this. We can go on to 13 different exercises with the American Kennel Club novice level.
Oh,
there's a 90-degree right turn, 180-degree right turn, 270-degree turn, 360-degree turn, and so on. So using that right turn, very basic learning, it's really when do we stop and when do we move forward. We're still doing the right turn in between. Here you go, Anakin. You touch. Good. You touch. And you can do this. This is fun. This is something you can do with, Anakin's a year old now, but you can do it with young puppies. There's no reason you can't do this with a puppy. You might have to bend over or perhaps use a target stick with a younger puppy or a smaller dog, but there's lots of ways we can make that more accessible for people.
That's great. And just out of curiosity, you were talking about his mom doing a great job. Is his mom in the area? Or is he just alone with you and getting used to?
No, he's alone with me. I went and picked him up this morning.
That's great.
Yes, you're very sweet. Good boy. Now he's getting silly. All right.
Love that.
Do you want to see some more, or should we come back to chat?
Oh, if there's something you would naturally do next, I encourage you to do that. If you feel like he needs to take a break, we can chat and take a break.
Yeah, I think it's time for a break for this one with the jumping and silliness we're getting. You ready for a break, Mr. Man? I bet you are. All right. There you go.
So I'm gonna ask Juliana to join us as well, because often she has a great eye for behavior and may have some questions herself. But my first question to you, Ayoka, is as a session goes, what would your next goals be? What would your next steps be? The dog is clearly following you relatively. So what would you want to do next?
My next goals would be to turn, excuse me, to turn maybe a full quarter turn for one hand touch. Here I was doing a little bit of a hand touch and a tiny little few degrees turn, another hand touch, a few degrees turn, another hand touch. So I will go to like a quarter turn and then a half turn, so a 180 turn, and then a 360 before I ask for the hand touch. So the hand touch is still in there, but I'm not asking for it every little bit to keep him along with me.
So you just gradually approximate that further and further along.
You got it.
Yeah. Juliana, do you have any questions for Ayoka?
That was such a fun and interesting training session. I love when I see somebody do something and I'm like, duh, like what a great way to teach that. That was awesome. Were you using a verbal cue with the touch, or yeah?
Yes, he does have touch on a verbal cue with his owner. So I was using that intermittently, probably not as consistently as I could have, but he does have it on a verbal cue.
And then what would be the goal with the hand out? Does that stay out as a cue, or do you fade that out?
That's a good question. In rally, communication is unlimited. Communication is generally allowed. So I could, in the ring, have that hand out.
Interesting. And communication is allowed, but treats in the ring?
No treats in the ring. Well, actually, it depends on what venue. Some venues do allow treats after the completion of a behavior. So we can't use them as a lure to get the behavior, but once the dog has completed the behavior, some venues do allow treats after at certain stations.
And what's your process for fading the treat, or I guess I should say building duration between treats, lowering the rate of food reinforcement as people get closer to competition?
Well, I would be, as I talked about, reducing the number of hand touches actually lowers the rate of reinforcement as we go. Once the dog can do a full turn with a hand touch, so a 360-degree turn with one hand touch, I might start working with food on like I've got a credenza here. I might put the cookies on the credenza, do the full turn, one hand touch, go to the credenza, get a cookie, and mark the behavior when the hand is touched, go get the cookie. So we start moving food off of our body. I do now very quickly. I didn't used to, but I'm learning that the earlier in the process we remove that food, the easier it is as we progress further on.
Ayoka, this is a common question that people have about food and fading the food out. So I'm going to back up and ask the question: in a typical novice competition, how many stations are you likely to have to do? In other words, out of the 40, you're not going to do 40 stations, I'm assuming.
Right.
What is the normal?
12 to 20 is the normal range.
12. So how would you teach someone to, and let's say they're in a venue that does not allow food. Is there not food until the complete 12 stations or 20 stations is complete? Or would it be allowed between each station? Or give me some sense of what the strictest version of that would be.
The strictest version is no food in the ring whatsoever. So you need to enter the ring, get ready to do your run, do your full run, leave the ring, and then go to cookies.
And so if you're working with a client who wants to work at that level, how I can see how you get to the point of completing a single behavior and manage to thin out the schedule of reinforcement with that one behavior at that station. But how do you approximate it past that?
Past that, there's a number of different ways. We talked about with the individual station, how I might put my cookies on the credenza. We do a full 360, put the cookies on my credenza, run and go get a cookie. We just increase the time between going back to the credenza. So, or to cookies on a chair. Lots of people will use cookies on a chair because they take the same chair to trials and that kind of thing. So we might do a 360-degree turn plus a little 4 steps of healing to the next station. Mark, go back to the cookies on the pins. We might progress to going to the next station and completing the next behavior mark, go back to the cookies outside.
So it's just a matter, you just teach it by gradual approximations to increase the length, like anything else.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Juliana, have we had any questions come in from our viewers that you might want to ask of Ayoka?
We have. Natalie's asking, would the hand touch still be allowed in AKC if the dog actually made contact with your hand, or would it need to be a no contact target?
That's a great question, Natalie. It would, I've seen some judges don't mind it. Some judges do mind it and might mark some points off. So if you train to a no touch, basically, if you train all of your right turns with the hand touch, your dog is going to be looking for that hand touch when you come around. And if you don't offer it, they're going to be up and ready in position anyway. So if the only time you don't offer that hand touch is in a trial, you're probably going to be okay. But some judges will mark it as points off, but it's only points. It's not a disqualification or anything like that.
And do you usually find out the rules of that particular competition in advance, or do you have to wait to get there and have the judge give you that information about what they are looking for and what they want?
In this specific case, I would ask the judge. But generally, the general rules are out and free for the public to download off of the AKC, or the World Cynosport has a rally program, and their rules are available to download as well.
Great. Do you have another question for us, Juliana?
Yeah, Tess is asking, is verbal praise allowed at all levels? Is petting and praise allowed?
Good question, Tess. And I'm not 100% sure about the master level in AKC, but I do know in CKC and World Cynosport, verbal praise is allowed at all levels. Absolutely. Petting type praise, depending on the organization, may or may not be allowed, but verbal praise is always allowed.
So interesting. And then they're also asking, how would I find out if there are any local rally competitions in my area? How about trainers teaching rally near me?
Rally competitions, the easiest way to find out about any American Kennel Club competition is they actually have an online calendar where you can go in and search what events are happening near you. And it will tell you what the events are, when they start, where they're being held, and you can go, and they're public events, you can go and watch. And actually going to a trial and talking to people is probably the best way to find out where classes are near you. But a simple Google search works always.
And I would remind them that it is, you don't always have to find a teacher near you, because you, for example, Ayoka, do virtual teaching, don't you?
Yes, absolutely. Online teaching for rally can be done I do it in this living room I've taught quite a number of people the basics of rally, and you don't need to go into, in fact, I would recommend learning the skills with your dog first, and then going into an environment where the environment is more of a challenge versus learning the skills. So go to a class to learn the skills, but learn the skills in a more challenging environment.
That's great. That's a great suggestion. Do local dog clubs or others you ever set up practice sessions so that you can go to a new place and practice without it being a real competition that you're worried about?
Yes.
I just wondered if that was a normal thing.
Yep, that's a thing for sure. They generally happen, in the weeks before trials. These things tend to happen more frequently, but depending on how active the club is, they may happen on a regular basis. They may happen on a monthly type basis where you can go and practice the run in a new environment with your dog. So it is totally possible to trial without having ever gone to a class when you have these kind of practice opportunities.
And it's also interesting for me to listen to you talk about the variations in rules, because I tend to, that's kind of what I meant by it seems less formal, because so often in obedience there seems to be really strict rules that don't vary very much between one location and the other. But what I've seen from Rally O is that it's a lot looser, and I don't mean that in a bad way. In fact, I think it's a very beneficial thing for people that it might be a nice. Can it be a good introduction to more formal obedience, or are they so different that it doesn't really prepare you for formal obedience?
Well, there's kind of two ways to think about it. It can be a great introduction. It's kind of meant as a bit of a what we call gateway sport,
Yeah.
the sport that gets you in and involved and interested. And then you think, we can do rally. Maybe we can work towards a precision of obedience. Once you're into it and maybe working multiple sports, like my dog Saga, for example, I worked her through Hannah Brannigan's Zero to CD program, which works on obedience skills. But once we were out of that program, Hannah and I actually break things down in a lot of similar ways into concepts. She had all the skills from that Zero to CD program that she would need to do rally obedience. So she has a precision for obedience, but we can have fun and do some rally obedience as well.
Well, that's cool. And your current dogs, I know you have Rottweilers. When I was sharing with everybody your bio and listed all those different sports, do your current dogs do rally obedience plus other sports, and how many other sports do they do?
Right now we do rally obedience and sheep herding and conformation, which is the AKC, I call it the beauty pageant sport. But I do those three, and those three sports keep me pretty busy year round.
I can imagine that it seems like they would. Well, before we go to our next break, I just want to check in with Juliana and see if she or our viewers had any other questions.
I am just curious about, you've talked a lot about Rally-O being more relaxed, a little different than obedience. What exactly, do you mind just briefly explaining what exactly obedience looks like? Because to me, this sounds quite technical, like Rally-O, like you need a lot of skills. Like, I don't know, how does it get harder or stricter from there?
In traditional obedience, you have a set pattern that's set the day of from the judge. There are no station signs for you to follow. The judge tells you where to go and what to do. So in one way, that's a little bit easier than trying to figure out your way around the course of station signs. However, your communication to the dog is very restricted in traditional obedience. You may be allowed to give one cue for heel, and when they ask you to stop, the dog has to know to sit automatically without an extra cue. So it gets really the restricted communication and the dog having to know when to perform certain behaviors increases with traditional obedience.
And I my question about this, because it's a similar, my perception has always been it's much more formal, and when I watch it, I almost always see people with a very strict posture and really straight backs.
Yes.
Their turns are very, and is that in an effort to make sure they're not showing any other cues? Because what I see when I go to rally obedience is I see a much more loose kind of a demeanor. And is that just a perception I have, or is that really a difference of the two?
Well, your posture actually is dictated by the rule book. You have to have your left hand up to your middle. You can't give extra cues to your dog. So yes, I think that does lead to more formal type movement and more rigid posture. Yes.
Yeah, it's an amazing difference when I watch them. Is it always looks so formal,
yes,
in every respect.
Yeah.
Plus, just the fact that you're not allowed to use all these extra cues, and you're not allowed to give a lot of the verbal or other kinds of praise. Just make them look like night and day. They don't even seem like the same sport, even though they are very closely related. Well, that's great. Well, I think we're going to be able to, in a few minutes, look at you doing a Rally-O obedience competition, and then we can talk a little bit more about that. But let's just take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. And I want to talk to all of you about one of the new kinds of classes that we've been offering the last couple of years at KPA, and we call them KPA Live virtual classes. They're group classes, and these classes usually last from 4 to 6 weeks and take place on Zoom. There's a video-based curriculum that kind of guides you each week, and then there's an online discussion group so you can stay in touch and communicate with the other people in your class. We have lots of great classes throughout the year. We often have anywhere from 10 to 12 different live classes each year. And you can check out our upcoming classes by going to KarenPryerAcademy.com. You can see on the screen there 2 of our upcoming classes, one being taught by Ann Waterbury on using your dog's ability to smell, and Ann Waterbury teaches nose work, but this is an introduction to that kind of stuff. And then Ellen Yoakum is going to be teaching about safe spaces for anxious and fearful learners, and it's a great opportunity for people to get exposure to how to create a safe environment for your dog. And it goes beyond fearful learners. It's really a helpful skill for all dogs to possess. So we encourage you to look at the live classes and see all of the different options. I'll be teaching a live class later on this year as well. But I don't want to waste any time. I want to get back and talk a little bit more with Ayoka about Rally O. And I was pleased to hear that Juliana had some of the same questions I had. Sometimes I feel, I'm very knowledgeable about a lot of things, and then it comes to stuff like Rally-O, and I suddenly go, "Oh, I don't know a lot about it, other than I've been to a couple competitions and seen it." In introducing you, I was even not sure I was pronouncing one of them right when it was Mondioring, or what would tell me about what just taking a small little tangent here.
Mondio is a bite sport, that involves sport that involves bite work, obedience, some retrieving, and some jumping.
Aha, that makes sense. Well, that's really cool. I think I knew that, but I wasn't really sure. So,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? I'd love it if we could, before we show this next video, this is a competition that you're doing with one of your Rottweilers. Which Rottweiler are we going to be watching? And tell us how long ago this was and what type of competition this was.
This would have been 2 Novembers ago. This is Saga, and this is our last leg that we needed to earn our novice title.
Okay. And just to be clear, you can have earned an advanced title with one dog, but if you have a brand new dog, you got to start all over again, don't you?
That's correct.
That's what I thought. So, because I know you've earned advanced titles with previous dogs, and so I wanted to make sure that people understood that the novice title is not for you as much as it is
for the dog.
Right. All right. Well, we're not going to be able to talk over the video, so let's just watch it take place, and then we can talk about it and debrief about it. And I'm going to ask Juliana to come on afterwards, so that she can talk about the and ask you questions about your competition as well. So let's watch.
Hoppity hop. Go get that bumming. Hi, Mom. I'm a good dog.
All right, I love it. Now I have a couple of different questions, but so for those that haven't been to a Rally-O competition, can you give some examples, particularly based on what we just saw, of what it might actually say on the signs? You come up to a sign and it's got a number. They're in order, right? You have to go to station number 1, station number 2, number 3, number 4.
That's correct.
And when you walked from our view, from the right to the left and went among the cones.
Yes.
What, for example, did the sign say so that you knew that that's what you were supposed to do?
The sign will say serpentine weave once. And there's a serpentine weave twice where you weave through the cones and come around the end cone and then come back in the opposite direction. But this one is just weave once through. And we enter just like in agility with the first cone on our left, and we do basically a slalom through those cones together. But the sign
And
would say serpentine lead once.
that sounds cool. And as I watch it, it occurs to me that really having a relatively reliable heel, a dog that will follow you wherever you go, seems to be the a basic essence or necessary behavior for rally obedience, right?
Yes.
You have to have the dog be able to follow you from place to place so that they get to the next station and all. So that's really fascinating. And I noticed in one of them there was you were walking around your dog. So what were the
Yes.
what did it say for you to do there?
The instructions would say halt, walk around dog. So halt means sit in rally language. So
Okay.
halt, walk around dog.
And
So
I
there's
assume go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
I was going to say, I assume that means that after the dog sits, while you walk around them, he must remain in that sit position. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
That's so good. So, Juliana, come on back in to the room here, and just wanted to see if you had any questions about the competition, or if anybody in the chat window had any questions that you wanted to ask Ayoka about that particular performance.
That was so lovely to watch. Oh my gosh, you two are such a beautiful partnership. I absolutely loved it.
Oh, thank you.
So obviously you're seeing the signs when you get there, but are you allowed to like walk the course ahead of time, or like do you hear from other people, oh, what was it like? Like, are you allowed to know ahead of time, or is it really meant to go in totally unknowing of what each sign is going to be?
You are allowed to walk the course ahead of time. In fact, before every class, you get to walk the course for 10 minutes.
Nice.
So you don't know until the day of what the exercises are going to be on that course.
Right.
But you are allowed to walk the course so you know where you're going, because keeping an eye on the course, keeping an eye on your dog, managing the two is a really big job. So having that advantage, yes, we are allowed to walk the course ahead of time.
And as you walk that course and look at what the signs say, I assume that you're allowed to then go to a judge during that 10 minutes and say, what are you looking for here? Or may I do this here? That's when you're allowed to ask those questions.
Yeah, the judge is present. You can ask any questions that you have within reason to the judge. Yes.
And do you get like, what happens if it's somebody's first time and their dog is like really not getting it and they keep trying and they keep trying? Like, at what point is somebody either disqualified, or like, how does it work if things aren't going well?
Things aren't going well. What I tell my students is, if things are really not going well, you know your dog the best, and you can ask to be excused. If things are going really poorly, you have a 4-minute time window in CKC, not in AKC. In CKC, you have 4 minutes to do your course. So if you exceed that time, then you would be asked to leave the ring in any venue that is a timed venue. But if it's really not going well, the judge can request that you leave the ring. But it's always better if you ask to be excused before that happens, of course, because you know your dog, right? Usually by the time the judge is saying it, you know, oh yeah, that was really not going very well. And it happens. It's happened to me many, many times.
Yeah, I think I saw in the chat window somebody just asked how old Saga was during that particular routine a couple of years ago.
She was about 4.5.
Oh, okay.
So a little bit older. I didn't get into obedience because of all our herding work. We didn't get into obedience. And she didn't mature. She wasn't quite ready. She had some of the skills, but wasn't ready for the venue, because as you could hear on the video, it's very loud there. It's at a dog show. Blow dryers, there's other dogs, there's other rings going on. So it's a very busy thing.
That's interesting. Great. So we had any other questions, Juliana, come in? Because I want to make sure we get to them if there's any questions.
Yes. Someone asked, do you think learning rally would make AKC obedience more difficult? I was wondering about going from praise being okay to no praise allowed would be difficult for the dog.
That can be. It depends on how you train. If you are training, as I did with Saga, we were training for traditional obedience, where we do mark and reward very frequently. So there is lots of opportunity for rewards, but not as much of the verbal praise. If you start with your obedience in mind and then add the praise after, it works a lot more smoothly, for sure. That's a great question, Tess.
if you're working up toward obedience, would you get to a point where you discontinue doing rally and just do obedience, or do you find it works fine to do both?
I think it works fine to do both at the same time, but if I could only start one, I would probably start with the obedience and then move into rally.
And why? I'm curious as to why you would do it in that order.
Because you are training for more restricted communication.
Right.
And if that is your baseline for your dog, adding the communication is not likely to hurt things. But if you have a dog that's used to a lot of communication and then you stop, that may be quite demotivating.
Right. That does make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That although it seems like you'd want to distinguish the difference between the two, so that if a dog going into a formal obedience competition was also used to doing rally, it would seem like there would be something you would want to do so that the dog would know this is not rally, this is formal, and that
Yes.
your expectations from me are going to be different.
You could absolutely do that as well. And in fact, there's no need to communicate as much as people do in rally. You could be as formal as you want to in the rally ring. You could be obedience formal if that's where you have trained to.
But it doesn't necessarily earn you extra points if you do that in a obedience competition.
No bonus points for formality, no.
And probably a dog is able to distinguish, like maybe the signs in the ring start to become environmental cues.
Absolutely. Yes, lots of different cues for sure.
Yeah. And you mentioned the environment at these competitions. As my gosh, seeing all those distractions, I'm like, sheesh, the rally is the easy part. What are some ways that you prepare dogs for an environment like that and being able to pull out those skills around such crazy distractions?
I start when my puppies, because I have multiple dogs, I start when my puppies are very, very young. And I have an older dog that's competing, and they come to dog shows with me just to be in the environment, to get cookies from different people, to learn that dog shows are a fun place and good things happen there. That's probably the biggest thing that I do with my dogs. Now, of course, in training, we add distractions, different kinds of distractions all throughout our training from the ground up. Almost as soon as they are getting a concept of the right turn, I might add a distraction into. And in fact, I talked about the cookie on the credenza. That's a distraction. Sure. Right there. So, I'm adding distractions very early on in the process. And I find if you add distractions and you visit and train in different places, so I'll go to different parks and work on my skills. One more distraction doesn't seem to be as much of a big deal to dogs, but we do have to add them gradually and, systematically, because we don't want to scare dogs in our adding of distractions or taking them to different venues. But starting as a little tiny puppy and going to dog shows where everyone goes, oh, that's so cute, I love Rottweilers, and they get cookies from the stranger, that really is a big help. And the background noise just does become exactly that background noise for them, because all these other good things are happening around them.
It's interesting because I totally agree with your approach to that. I do a lot of distraction training for a lot of the places that I work in. And one of the reasons I started going to some of the dog shows in my area was just so that I could experience the distraction level and how hard it would be to work in those areas. I didn't realize I would get sucked into some of these sports and get fascinated by watching them. but it is certainly a very distracting environment. We have a public park near here where they do dog shows on a regular basis, and there's so many dogs there and so many different activities taking place. And at that particular park, there's also the smells of the barbecue station and the hamburger station, and they're cooking and grilling, and all those smells are out there that are really distracting to the dogs. And I think that can often be, I love the fact that you take your dogs when they're young and with no expectation to perform at all. They're just there to experience the environment and to learn, like you said, that it's a fun environment.
Yes, absolutely. It's all about fun.
No, that's great. Yeah, go ahead.
Are there the same issues in Rally O where as like the fast paced agility and Flyball where it's kind of like be on and then be off? in terms of like, the dogs are hanging out during the day. We're asking them to be chill in their crates and stuff like that. And then suddenly they need to perform. Is that a kind of similar for Rally-O?
Yes, very similar. The period of time for which they're on is a little bit longer in Rally Obedience. We're not, in agility and flyball, we're talking seconds. And Rally-O, about 2 minutes is the on time. So I have, I'm also a certified control and leash instructor. So I use the control and leash program and a lot of their exercises as part of our warm-up routine to prepare my dogs to be on, to let them know that work is coming up. It's time to get ready.
So
That's
smart.
great.
It's just so challenging. All of it so impressive.
It is, and it's kind of an amazing thing. I think it's interesting as our viewers listen to Juliana and I both ask questions. It's clear that neither of us work in that arena very often. Yet we're very knowledgeable about dogs, but yet hearing the challenges that you face and the way you prepare for them, I think is really a valuable lesson for all of us, because we deal with distractions on an everyday basis in lots of different ways, and a lot of the tools that you use for preparing your dogs for distractions in the sporting world are very effective and useful in every day. So yeah, that's great. Well, you know what, Ayoka, I've been so pleased to be able to hear about your training techniques and watch you working with Anakin and watch you working with Saga. Was really great to see, and I'm hopeful that we can get you back on Live from the Ranch again in the future to see some of the cool things that you're doing. But I really appreciate it. We are amazingly already out of time, and it's time for us to go. But I appreciate you spending the time with us today and sharing your skills and your knowledge. And it was just great to watch. I loved it. It's amazing when I see something like this. I walk away going, I want to get involved in that. I don't have the time. I just trying to add something to my, but it's amazing when you see somebody doing it well. It's really inspiring. So I really appreciate you being on the program and sharing all of that with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Well, thank you. Well, I want to thank Juliana as well for joining us again as co-host, as she has every single month. And I also want to remind you that next month is July, and our first Thursday of the month is the 4th of July. So we are going to take the month off. We're going to enjoy the 4th of July, but we will be back in the first Thursday of August, which happens to be August 1st. And so we will be announcing our guests. We have a couple of guests that we're trying to get lined up, and we'll let you know who our guests will be in August in the very near future. But we look forward to seeing you at that episode. In addition, if you have ideas or thoughts for us about guests that you'd like to see, or a cool video that you've done some training with that you'd like to share on the program, please visit our website and go to the ranch at clickertraining.com/live, and you'll see a place there where you can share your comments, your suggestions, and your training videos. And finally, here's a reminder of all of the offers that we talked about today. Becoming a dog trainer and being a part of our dog trainer professional program, the Share the Joy of Training affiliate program, and our live classes, which are virtual, and we have many of them throughout the year. So go to our website, find out more about them, and please come back and join us again in August 1st, for our next edition of Live from the Ranch. Happy training, everybody. Bye-bye. Thank you so much for being here.